who live outside the rich industrialized West are doing better, are being more prosperous, are accounting for a greater share of the world's GDP. That's been good for everybody. What it does, though, mean is that the traditional powers inevitably are playing less of a dominant role. And this is something that has been going on for a while. I think we remember Barack Obama, who spoke about the United States leading from behind. So I think we need to understand that there are some deep historical and economic shifts, broadly positive in nature. And our job, as politicians, as thinkers, is to figure out how to be sure that those shifts are positive for everybody. Having said all of that, there are certainly some areas where Canada has a different point of view from the current US administration. One example is climate change. Another example is some of our trading relationships. I referred to the TPP. And I think the approach in these areas needs to be for countries to continue to pursue what they think is the right course. So when it comes to the Paris Accords, we believe this is so important. I have 3 kids. I can't imagine an issue more important than climate change. And we continue to work with our partners around the world, and we continue to hold the door very wide open for our American friends to say, you can come back in if and when you like. I think the approach to the TPP, and here I would really like to especially acknowledge Japanese leadership, has been exactly the right one too, which is to say, we think, and I'm now speaking for Canada, but also for the TPP 11 countries, we think this is an important agreement. We think that freer trade in the Asia Pacific is essential. I think we all, the TPP 11, we were sad that this US administration did not want to go ahead with the TPP, but we knew that the right course for us was to move forward while very much keeping a space open for the United States, were it to choose to reconsider and join us. And when it comes to the TPP, I think the best thing we can do is to make it an incredibly successful trading community, and to demonstrate through our own success for us, our American neighbors, that it's a great idea and that they should come in and join us.
Thank you very much, Minister. I know that there'll be many here who would like to ask questions. If you'd like to ask something, could you please raise your hand? I will then identify you and the microphone will come to you. Ambassador Chan Heng-chi.
Thank you, Minister Freeland. I am an ambassador at large with the Foreign Ministry, but I ask this question as an academic because that's my other hat. And anyway, my foreign minister said, ambassadors at large are not civil servants. So
you're allowed to say what you really think?
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And actually, I found your speech very thought-provoking. It was very substantial. And I will ask you a question which also shows really I'm thinking through some ideas. You gave a very robust defense of the rules-based order and that democracy and liberal values undergird that order. Now, your last paragraph, the last part of your speech said that new powers are rising, we've got to learn to accommodate and have that conversation. It's very difficult because it's a contradiction. And I think we'll be seeing this here. As academics, and I know you, I've read a lot of what you wrote when you were with Financial Times. We talk about the changing global order, changing international order. We're seeing it as it is now, and it's being challenged. The rules base from the after World War II is being challenged by Russia, by China, countries who say we didn't have a part in writing those rules. Now, as we see it, and the larger the power grows, the rising power becomes, the more challenging for the established powers. And it's getting ugly. Trade war is just one expression, but I think there's more. It's also, what do we do about, you know, the sea lanes and, you know, every other aspect? Are we going towards version 2.0 of a Cold War again, which is values-based? Because if you are being very frank about it, how does the world order change? And how do you bargain, if at all?
Yeah, I do see you're allowed to speak your mind, and that's great. That is an excellent question, and I think it is maybe the biggest challenge. It's the biggest international. I feel like the biggest domestic challenge of the 21st century is the economic issue that I talked about, which is being sure that our prosperity is shared. And I quoted your Prime Minister because I know that that's something that Singapore is very conscious of as well. So I really do feel, you know, at home, the thing that we as a Canadian government can do, most important thing to keep our democracy strong is to keep our middle class strong and confident in the future. And if we fail to do that, then all of this international summitry ultimately means nothing. But I think, Ambassador, you have identified one of the biggest challenges of the 21st century, which is, you know, speaking as a member of parliament, as a citizen, as a minister of a country that believes profoundly in its liberal democratic values, we need to be frank about the reality that the rise of emerging powers, the growth of the global economy, means that the economic dominance of the liberal democracies in the world is growing smaller. We can be growing richer, each one of us, but the percentages are clear. And I don't think there is actually a contradiction in speaking up for and being very robust in explaining why, for my country, for Canada, liberal democracy is the right way to run our country, and at the same time also being very strong in speaking for a rules-based international order and a real embrace of multilateralism. I think the two actually are connected, and what it does require is a couple of things. That international order does need to be open to new entrants. The openness is what makes this shift is what makes the shift in relative economic weight both possible and something we can collectively accommodate, and also, frankly, makes my people more prosperous. Canadians benefit from the rise of Asia. You are our trading partners, and the richer you are, the more blackberries and other great Canadian products you're going to be buying, and that is a great thing. So, you know, we really believe as Canadians, we're a trading nation. We believe in international trade. We believe that we have not just kind of an intellectual stake in the rise of the rest, but a real practical stake in the rise of the rest. What's important, though, is that this rules-based international order be one where everyone follows the rules, where might is not right. And, you know, Canada geographically is a very big country. Economically, we're not small. But we realize as number 10 in the world, a world that goes back to great power conflicts is not a world that is great for us. I don't think it's a world that is great for Singapore or for the countries of ASEAN either. And then I think the final thing that I would say on this values issue that you identified, Ambassador, is I think it's important for political leaders from liberal democracies not to be timid in speaking up for our values. And, you know, as I said, you know, it can be easy to be dazzled by the effectiveness of authoritarian regimes. And speaking as a government leader in a liberal democracy, all of those constraints on the political leadership in a democracy are real constraints. They are real. They can, you know, make your life difficult. It's easy to dream when you're sitting in your office in government, you know, wow, wouldn't it be easier if I didn't have to deal, you know, we have, in Canada, we have question period every day. So every day we have an hour in Parliament when the opposition tortures us. My children have come a few times, and one of my daughters said, "It's so unfair. I know how hard you're working for Canadians, but the opposition asks questions which make it seem as if you're not doing the right things." I said, yeah, that's how it works. I used to be a journalist. So I have you know, great theoretical sympathy for journalists. But I can tell you, having your feet held to the fire by journalists, it's hard. And so it's easy to kind of imagine that if government were liberated from those constraints, you could do more, you could achieve more. I personally don't want to live in a country like that. I actually was a student in the Soviet Union. I lived there for nearly a year. So I have a little bit of personal experience, albeit, you know, as a Westerner, what it's like. I don't want to live in a country like that. And I think that all of those challenges and constraints and limits on the democratically elected government in my country actually makes us better. And I think it's important for us, precisely as you say, Ambassador, at a time when we see the rise of authoritarian states, it's important for those of us who speak for democracies to speak strongly in favor of their virtues.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Surya.
I'm Surya from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies here in Singapore. Minister, you have made a debatable point that the leaders of the present international order, namely the West, and the rest of the world, there's not much of a contradiction when the rest of the world, led by China, India, and other BRICS countries, are making also for calling for a new rules-based international order. But the point is, in this context, which countries in the Asian continent would you count among Canada's partners to redefine the present international order? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that's like being asked which of my 3 children is my favorite. And that is a question they often ask me, and I always decline to answer it. But what I will say is Canada very much, you know, I am here to attend the ASEAN meetings. And Canada, we very much value our partnership with ASEAN as an organization. As I mentioned, we are kind of on the foothills of pursuing a free trade agreement with ASEAN. That's something that we are very supportive of and would like to work towards as quickly as possible. And then I do, you know, maybe want to take this opportunity to underscore the point with which I began. Which is something that we really admire and appreciate and take strength from. In a lot of the countries of Southeast Asia, very much including Singapore, is the fact that this is a part of the world where there are diverse societies that work, diverse societies that embrace their diversity and that work hard in a very intentional way to ensure that that diversity is a strength. And as you know, there are a lot of countries in the world where that whole idea of having a diverse society, of living in a diverse community, is being questioned, where people are saying, actually, it's maybe even not possible for human beings to live in a society with people who have a different religion or language or culture. And for Canadians, one of our core values, and really at this point a core characteristic of who we are as Canadians is we are a diverse society. And so having the example of countries, and many of the most successful diverse societies in the world are found here in Southeast Asia, having those examples out there too,